Welcome back to the channel. I'm Mark Cowling, a professional bass lure fishing guide and author, and this is the definitive guide to bass lure fishing. Just another beautiful evening out on the South Devon coastline. Sun's just set, hopefully there's no thunderstorms around, and I'm just pumping out a surface lure out over a beautiful bit of reef in front of me, just as the tide floods in and the light starts to fade. But the reason for the video is I wanted to introduce the South Devon Bass Guide YouTube channel. I wanted to also introduce the company, the business, South Devon Bass Guide. My second guide Joe and I've been doing this for 10 years now, full-time since August 2017. My second guide Joe, this is his first full season as a full-time guide, and I wanted to almost give you like a half-term report, if you like, now that we're just into the start of July, in relation to the more significant captures that we've achieved with our clients since the turn of the year. And we've had some amazing fish, some very, very interesting fish, I can assure you. And I'll start off, my second guide Joe, he went out with a lady angler, Mauve, and her other half, and they started off in an estuary location at low tide, and this was in January, by the way. And I said to Joe, I said, the conditions I think just look brilliant for a bit of open coast daylight fishing. And there was a beach, I don't know, about a mile away from the estuary that they were fishing. That it's been very, very kind to us. It's somewhere that I pretty much taught myself how to catch bass on lures. And I'd actually been there a couple of days before, and I noted that there was just no weed in the water, which was weed fragments, which is very unusual really for January. I think we'd had a pretty, if I recall rightly, we had a very nice, calm, clear, frosty, settled spell over Christmas. And we just had a little bit of wind and rain at the start of January, then it was nice again, you know, before the rain really hit us in January, because it did go downhill. But just prior to that, Joe was out guiding in January. So Joe, my second guide, he does guide all year round. I stop the second week of December, excuse me, and I then start again sometimes the last weekend of March, or right at the start of April. But Joe does guide all year round. The main reason for that is because we catch bass on lures all year round. And on this particular occasion, as I said, I was very keen for Joe to go out onto the open coast, and sure enough, excuse me, when they arrived, right in the corner of the beach, there was just a lovely section of white water, a section of rocks just leading onto sand. No need to put on a weighted hook. I think it would have picked up any weed fragments that were there. I think that was the reason that Joe placed on the weightless hook onto the Savage Gear gravity stick that you'll see. And yeah, he actually said to Mauve that there could be a bass in there, and if there is, it's probably going to take it very, very quickly. And yeah, she arrowed the lure in and wallop, and what an amazing fish. 60 centimeters, open coast in January. Fantastic fish. So what a way to start the year. February was quite a tough month actually. I managed to catch some nice fish myself. I think I actually caught 2 60 centimeter bass in February. But Joe was very, very unlucky with I think it was the 3 or 4 guided sessions that he did. Excuse me. I ate a Snickers a minute ago, and I got a little bit of peanut on my throat. Apologies for that. And yeah, so it seemed that every time Joe was due to be guiding, the weather just, it was a bad day. The wind came up, it poured with rain. There was a couple of occasions that we rescheduled the sessions, but yeah, obviously in the winter I don't guide. I spent the winter learning how to film and edit and fly a drone, played a little bit of snooker as well. But yeah, Joe, like I say, did a handful of sessions. But what was interesting is there was a client called Steve, who's a regular of ours. He's actually caught a 70 centimeter bass with me, and he he had two things in mind. He had two goals for the year, for the season, if you like. And one of them was to try and catch a bass in every month of the year. And the other one was to try and catch a PB of any species. And he went out with Joe in February. They had a torrid day out, I should say, or I would say. And he said, look, I'd like to come out in March. So we were like, yeah, no problem at all. Booked him in. And Steve is a very, very good angler, I must say that. We do, as we always do at South Devon Bass Guides, we'll always teach someone how to cast, how to work certain lures, how to read the marks. But Steve is one of these anglers that he is very experienced. He's been out with us a hell of a lot. So yeah, we did push the boat out a little bit in regard to the location. And even though I think he's about 67, he's fitter than me. That's not saying much, but yeah, he is fit. Still got that Snickers in there. And him and Joe walked a long way out to a mark. They had on the Mega Bass sleeper crawl. They were fishing for bass. And lo and behold, they hooked into what could quite possibly be the largest lure caught Gilthead Bream in the UK at £6 14 ounces. Now, this fish, it was unbelievable. Like I said, I remember being on the phone to Joe at the time. I'd pulled over, stopped the car, and I just wanted to see how he was getting on. And literally, as he was telling me, yeah, you know, we've just started, we're just sort of moving along the shoreline. Steve's got on the Mega Bass sleeper crawl. He's like, yeah, he's in. And I heard everything. I heard the whole battle, because I think Joe just did what I did. He just shoved the phone in his front pocket. And yeah, I could hear him going, you know, what is that? Oh, it's massive. It seems massive. Joe had set Steve's drag fairly tight, but this fish just went deep and it was taking lines like a zzz, zzz, quite slowly, nodding its head. It got in the flow. But eventually they got it in, and yeah, there in front of them was this absolute dinner plate size Gilthead Bream. I mean, what a fish. I mean, what it was doing there in March, who knows? I mean, I did think that we might catch a Gilthead Bream in maybe August, because a lot of the places that we're lure fishing, especially with the creature baits, in the summer months, I did think, you know, I know that there's Gilthead Bream there because I've had bait anglers that are only 50-60 metres away from us latch into gilt. So, you know, I'm surprised. I'm sure we might have hooked one, especially at night. I'm sure I've hooked one at night. Just that sort of rat-a-tat-tat kind of bite, and could have been a flatfish, I suppose. But Joe and I both think we've hooked gilts at night, and I believe that they take lures in the Mediterranean. So I thought that maybe we would get one in August when the sea temperature's at its highest. But no, March, early March as well, when the sea temperature's actually at its lowest. Now, I suspect that fish was much like the bass that come in early season, the bigger ones. I think it was like a forerunner to the spawning stock, if you like. You tend to find the big fish come in early to spawn, and I think once they've spawned, they're hungry. And I actually think that this Gilthead Bream was exactly the same as the big bass. I think it had come into the area, spawned, was hungry, and the Mega Bass sleeper crawl, which was actually being pulled by the tide. So normally I move it, pulls it, so it sits up with the claws up. This lure was actually pretty much continually moving or just being lifted off the seabed. So it must have just popped up at just the right time. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Gilthead Bream, £6 14 ounces. So the next two significant captures were in April, and they were bass of 63 centimetres and 64 centimetres. That one of Joe's clients had the 63, my client had the 64. They were both personal bests, which is something that we tend to specialise in at South Devon Bass Guide. I'm very, very pleased to say. Both bass were caught on the Mega Bass Sleeper Crawl. Joe's fish, which was for his client Peter, breeze has just come up. Basically, Joe had seen a number of fish sort of moving up and down this particular area, and he just said to Peter, just keep casting along the margins, along this particular zone where Joe believes a fish was basically moving up and down. And he said, just keep putting it in this area. Now, there was quite a lot of weed fragments on the seabed, so Peter couldn't move it for very long. It was basically a case of just cast it in, move it once, move it twice, move it 3 times, and nothing takes it, bring the lure in, and then cast out again. And sure enough, one of the casts moved it, bang. What a magnificent fish, 63 centimetres PB. Then with my client, Dan, a lovely guy who comes down from Suffolk with me. He comes down very often early in the season and late in the season. He's had quite a lot of fish with me, but unfortunately they've all been small. But the 64 centimetre fish that he caught certainly wasn't small. Again, his personal best, an absolute animal of a fish. And what was really, really pleasing about it was that I'd kind of signposted, if you like, or highlighted a particular area in between the weeds that I suspected the bass would move out of from a nearby channel, and I've seen them do it route through this particular area. It's almost like a road set in amongst the weed, really, the weed clumps, I should say. And I said to Dan, I said, when the tide starts flooding in, I stood in there at low tide, you know, so we could just see the trajectory that he was going to bring the lure along. And I said to him, as the tide floods in, as soon as there's water there, I said, I reckon there'll be bass moving up that road, if you like. And yeah, again, sure enough, just as I was a little bit further away from him, and I'd eyeballed a couple of smaller bass, I heard the shout, and he said that he felt like a little tap. He kept moving the lure, felt another tap, the rod went over this time. And what was really cool about this fish is that another one that he says was slightly bigger followed the lure in alongside the one that was hooked. So what a sight that must have been. But a fantastic fish, 64 centimetres, over the moon for Dan. So the next big one, this was the one, 80 centimetres. The first double figure bass that a client's caught with us at South Devon Bass Guide. We've had, alongside this 80 centimetre fish, we've actually had 18 bass over 70 centimetres, and last year we actually had 5 over 70 centimetres, so absolutely amazing. But this 80 centimetre fish was for a really, really nice guy called Alfie. He come down for a 3-day package with his dad. There's a real, there's like a background story, if you like, to this capture, which I'm going to write in full in a book that I'm going to write this coming winter, which will be Bachelor Fishing Guide's Perspective Volume 3. I'm going to tell the full story in that book because it is a remarkable story, and there was a hell of a lot that led up to this capture. There really was. So I won't spoil it, but what I can tell you is this magnificent bass was caught on a Pirate Lures Teaser 120 in the pink cheek configuration, which is a colour that I really, really like. And I feel bad for the guy that owns Pirate Lures, who's a friend of mine, because when we got this magnificent bass out of the water, I was petrified that it wasn't going to go back. It was quite a warm day, even though the battle was very short-lived. It's just such a majestic creature lying in front of you. Basically, the whole time it was with us, it only spent about 10% of the time that it was with us out of the water, you know, where we got the photograph of the fish. The rest of the time it was in the net, and I didn't get a photograph of the bass with the lure in its mouth because it basically spat it out in the net. And just as the bass was recovering and was about to swim away, it came into my head, oh no, I didn't get a picture of the lure in its mouth. But yeah, you know, there's no bull involved. It was a client capture. Pirate Lures Teaser, what an amazing fish. 11 pound, 12 ounces, the first double for a South Devon Bass Guide client. I'm sure there'll be more, maybe one this season. I think I'm due another double. I mean, my biggest is 83, 12 pounds, 2 ounces. I'd love another double, I really would. I think it will come on the creature bait, although, like I said, I was very, very pleased that this one came out on a small soft plastic paddle tail. Finally onto a capture that my second guide Joe achieved with his client Chris last month, and this was a 68 centimetre bass, so 7 pounds, maybe even a little bit more than that. It was a very, very fat fish, and this bass was caught at night on a gravity stick post tail, the white one. And yeah, again, a magnificent piece of guiding by Joe. It really was, because he placed his client in the perfect position. These guys were relatively inexperienced fishermen, particularly in regard to lures, and fishing in the dark is never easy with people that you know, aren't used to this kind of fishing. And yeah, Joe just, you know, kept up their spirits. I think they'd caught a few small ones that day, or it might have been the day before. I think he had them for a couple of days, and Joe and I had a good conversation about where to take them. And we knew from experience that there was some decent bass around, and we'd seen again bass during the day in this particular area. And the tide was dropping, it had just become dark. I think it was about 10 o'clock, something like that. A very, very specific period in the tide when the bass tend to move through this area. And yeah, sure enough, cast in, couple of turns, absolute smash the lure, started taking line. I believe Joe actually had just put back a bass for the other angler. I think it was his brother, I think it was called Andrew. So they put back a fish that was about 3 pounds, I think it was 52 centimetres. And then Joe heard the shout, sprinted you know, through the water, over a tree trunk, through the weeds, and when he got to Chris, he could still, the fish was still taking line, even though he had a tight drag. So Joe sort of said, you know, where is it? And Chris said, like, in that direction, but nothing else was happening. He said, oh, I think it's stuck. So Joe had the light on, of course, and basically he suspected that the lure was caught in the weed, as my lure is right at the moment. Just got it out. And yeah, so Joe waded out in the dark with the light on, with the net, and he said all he saw was the tail, this massive tail of this fish. And he said the fish was just basically just lying there, like dormant, almost like stunned. And he said he just put the net in position, and the rim of the net just touched the fish, and bang, it just shot straight into the net. I mean, how lucky is that? I mean, let's say throughout the season we do lose some good fish, you know, with clients, but I'd say it evens itself up, because we do get in some very, very big fish that probably we've had no right to get in. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope that gives you an insight into what Joe and I do with our South Devon Bass Guide clients. It's been a fantastic first half of the season, and I'm sure the second half is going to be just as good, if not better. As I've said, all of the future captures, or the significant ones at least, will be filmed and presented via the South Devon Bass Guide YouTube channel. So go and look for that. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and Bertie and I will see you again very soon.